My name is Anna Fisher, and I was born into a world that many would call simple, yet it was all I had ever known. My family belonged to a small Amish community in the lush countryside of Ohio. We lived by the rhythm of the seasons, our days guided by the rising and setting sun. Life was dictated by the ordnung, a strict set of rules that shaped everything, from the clothes we wore to the prayers we whispered at dawn. There were no cars, no electricity, no distractions from the outside world. Simplicity was not just a way of life, it was a doctrine. I remember the creak of the wooden floorboards in our small farmhouse, the scent of bread baking in the cast-iron oven, and the sound of horses trotting down the gravel road outside. My mornings began before the sun rose, kneading dough for breakfast as my younger siblings gathered eggs from the chicken coop. By mid-morning, we were already in the fields, our hands blistered, and our faces kissed by the sun. Hard work was not optional, it was our purpose. Each blister and bead of sweat was a testament to our faithfulness, a way to honor God through labor. My mother, a quiet but resolute woman, often reminded us, the path to salvation lies in obedience. Her words became the cornerstone of my existence. I followed every rule with precision, ensuring my dress was always modest, my chores done on time, and my prayers recited with unwavering discipline. Yet, there was a weight that settled deep within me, one I couldn't quite explain. It was as if I was walking through life with a constant question lingering at the edges of my mind. Was it enough? The days flowed into weeks, the weeks into years, and I grew into the mold of a perfect daughter of the community. My father's approval was a rare and quiet nod, my mother's pride a faint smile as she watched me sew intricate patterns into quilts for our neighbors. But behind my smile, I began to feel the cracks forming. My prayers often felt mechanical, my faith more like a duty than a connection. I told myself that this was normal, that doubt was dangerous, and that questioning was a path that led only to darkness. Yet the questions persisted. During late nights, by the glow of a kerosene lamp, I would sit and stare out the window, wondering what lay beyond the rolling hills and forests that bordered our world. My heart would ache as I thought about the sermons I had heard week after week, sermons that emphasized obedience but left me feeling hollow. I wanted to feel the closeness of God, to know Him in a way that was real and unshakable, but I was too afraid to admit it, to my family, to my community, and even to myself. Winter came early that year, blanketing our fields in a quiet frost. It was on one of those cold, brittle mornings that my routine life began to fracture. My mother asked me to take a basket of homemade preserves to a neighbor recovering from illness. I bundled up in my woolen cloak and climbed into the buggy, the familiar creak of the wooden wheels breaking the silence of the crisp air. The horse trotted obediently down the frozen road as I clutched the reins, the warmth of my breath forming clouds in the icy air. The path home was a winding stretch through the woods, a route I had traveled countless times. But that morning, the sun barely penetrated the dense canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows on the ground. The air was heavier than usual, the silence oppressive. I tried to shake off the unease that crept over me, focusing instead on the rhythmic clatter of hooves against the dirt. It happened in an instant. Around a blind curve, the sound of an engine roared to life, shattering the stillness. A truck, moving far too fast for the icy conditions, appeared out of nowhere. Its headlights cut through the gloom, blinding me. The horse reared, its panicked whinny piercing the air as the truck skidded, unable to stop in time. I barely had the chance to scream before the impact. If my story has drawn you in, and you're as captivated by this journey as I am while telling it, don't forget to subscribe to our community. Be part of something meaningful, where we explore stories of faith, hope, and transformation together. Hit the like button, and let's continue this incredible journey side by side. The force threw me from the buggy, and the world went black. When I awoke, it wasn't to the freezing touch of winter or the frantic neighing of my horse. It was to silence, a deafening, oppressive silence that seemed to stretch endlessly around me. My body felt weightless, suspended in a void that defied description. The last thing I remembered was the blinding glare of the truck's headlights, the screech of its tires, and the overwhelming crash that had obliterated the fragile order of my world. Now, there was nothing but darkness, so absolute it felt alive, pressing against me from every side. I tried to move, but my limbs felt disconnected, as though they no longer belonged to me. Panic rose like a tide, cold and unrelenting, as I struggled to understand where I was, or even if I was still alive. The ground beneath me was non-existent, the air thick and suffocating, as if it carried the weight of countless unspoken fears. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound was swallowed before it could even form. It was as if the void itself consumed everything. My thoughts spiraled, grasping for anything familiar, any shred of logic to anchor me. Was this death? The question clawed at my mind. I had always believed that those who followed the path of obedience would be welcomed into heaven, into the light of God's presence. But there was no light here, no warmth or comfort. Only emptiness, an unending abyss that seemed to mock the certainty I had clung to all my life. As I floated in the void, memories began to surface, unbidden and relentless. They played out before me, not as fragmented flashes, but as vivid scenes, like a film projected against the darkness. I saw myself as a child, sitting beside my mother as she read from the Bible by the flickering light of a lantern. Her voice, steady and soothing, recited passages about faith, humility, and salvation. I had believed her every word, absorbing the lessons as absolute truth. But the scenes shifted, pulling me deeper into places I had tried to forget. I saw moments when doubt had crept into my heart, times when I questioned whether God truly saw me or if my obedience was enough. I had buried those thoughts, terrified of where they might lead, yet here they were, laid bare before me. Then came the moments I dreaded most, the ones I had pushed so far down that I had convinced myself they didn't exist. I saw the hurt in my sister's eyes when I scolded her for forgetting to say grace, my pride masquerading as righteousness. I saw the quiet tears of a neighbor I had judged for struggling to keep up with the community's demands, my words sharp and unforgiving. The truth unfolded mercilessly. My faith had not been the pure devotion I thought it was. It had been tainted by pride, by a desperate need to prove myself worthy. The weight of these revelations crushed me, and the darkness around me seemed to grow heavier, thicker. It was as though the void fed on my guilt, wrapping itself tighter around my soul. I wanted to cry, to beg for forgiveness, but the words wouldn't come. I was paralyzed, trapped in this overwhelming sense of failure and regret. As the darkness closed in, I thought of the prayers I had whispered all my life, prayers that often felt like obligations, recited out of habit rather than connection. Were they meaningless? Had I been going through the motions, hoping that outward piety would mask the hollowness within? The questions came faster now, each one cutting deeper than the last. For the first time, I felt utterly alone, separated not just from the world I knew, but from God himself. And then, just as despair threatened to consume me entirely, something shifted. It was faint at first, barely perceptible, a pinprick of light in the suffocating darkness. It flickered weakly, like the flame of a single candle in a vast, cold void. But it was there, undeniable and persistent. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. The light grew slowly, pushing back the darkness inch by inch. It wasn't just a physical illumination. It carried with it a warmth that I could feel deep in my soul, a warmth that began to melt the icy grip of fear and guilt. As it advanced, the void seemed to retreat, recoiling as though it couldn't bear the presence of this light. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't alone anymore. Something, or someone, was coming for me. The air, once heavy and oppressive, began to shift. A faint hum filled the space, a sound so gentle and soothing that it felt like a lullaby for my fractured soul. And then, for the first time since the crash, I felt the stirrings of hope. As the radiant figure stood before me, the light seemed to hum with an energy that was alive and purposeful. The voice that had spoken my name resonated within me, not just as sound, but as truth. It was as though every syllable unraveled the knots of doubt and fear I had carried for so long, replacing them with a clarity I had never known. "Anna," the voice spoke again, this time with a tenderness that made tears well up in my eyes. "You have searched for meaning in the works of your hands and the traditions of men. But you were never meant to carry this burden alone." I felt as though the very essence of my soul was being laid bare, every hidden fear and unspoken doubt exposed in the presence of this divine figure. Yet, instead of shame, I felt a wave of compassion washing over me. It was as if the light itself was reaching into the deepest parts of my being, pulling out the pain and replacing it with peace. The figure extended a hand, and though I still couldn't feel my body, I sensed an unmistakable pull. It wasn't physical, it was something far deeper, an invitation to let go of everything that had held me captive. "Come," the voice said, and with that single word, I understood what was being offered. The scenes around me began to shift again, but this time, they were not moments from my past. They were glimpses of something new, something yet to come. I saw myself standing before others, speaking words I hadn't yet spoken, sharing a truth that burned within me like a flame. I saw faces illuminated by hope, lives transformed not by rules or rituals, but by the boundless grace of a love that sought them where they were. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the magnitude of what was unfolding. The burden I had carried, the striving, the fear, the endless question of whether I was enough, was being lifted piece by piece. In its place was a simple yet profound truth. I was loved, not because of what I had done, but because of who he was. "Will you trust me?" the voice asked, the words both a question and a command. I wanted to respond, to say yes with every part of my being, but I hesitated. Could I truly leave behind the security of the life I had known, even with its flaws and doubts? Could I step into the unknown, guided only by faith? The figure seemed to sense my hesitation, and the light grew even brighter, its warmth enveloping me. "You were made for more than this," the voice said, and I felt the truth of those words echoing through me. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a calling, a purpose that had been waiting for me all along. As I stood there, caught between fear and faith, the figure's gaze met mine, and in that moment, I felt a strength that wasn't my own. The chains of doubt and guilt that had bound me began to fall away, and for the first time, I felt the freedom to truly live. If this chapter has touched your heart and reminded you of the power of faith and grace, show your support by clicking the like button. Join our community by sharing an EMM in the comments. Let your voice be a blessing to others and receive one in return. Together, we can walk this journey of faith and transformation. The figure's outstretched hand hovered before me, a gesture of invitation and reassurance. Though my body felt weightless, immaterial, I sensed the profound choice before me as if it resonated in every fiber of my existence. This was no simple moment, it was a threshold. To take that hand was to surrender everything I thought I knew, to step into an entirely new reality shaped not by rules, but by grace. As the light continued to pulsate around the figure, I felt memories surfacing once more. These weren't like the painful recollections from before. They were softer, imbued with a strange kind of clarity. I saw myself kneeling in prayer as a child, the innocence of my words untainted by fear or performance. I saw fleeting moments when the beauty of creation, the golden glow of a sunset, the soft cooing of doves in the barn, had stirred something within me, a longing I couldn't name, but that now felt unmistakably divine. The voice spoke again, tender yet resolute. "Anna, you were never meant to walk this path alone. I have been with you through every shadow, every doubt, every question you dared not ask. And I am here now, calling you to something greater." The hand extended further, and though I still couldn't feel my body, I knew I was moving toward it. The act of reaching out wasn't physical, it was spiritual, a relinquishing of all the barriers I had built over years of striving and fear. The moment my essence met that radiant hand, it was as though a wave of pure warmth surged through me. The light around us exploded in brilliance, enveloping me completely. Suddenly, I was standing, not in the darkness, not in the void, but in a place I can only describe as alive with light. The air itself seemed to shimmer, carrying a sense of peace so profound that I could hardly breathe. There was no pain, no fear, no weight of regret. Instead, there was a wholeness, a completeness that made me feel as though I was finally where I was always meant to be. The figure stepped closer, and though its features remained obscured by the radiance, I felt its presence more intimately than I had ever felt anything before. The voice came again, but this time, it wasn't just words, it was truth that resonated deep within my soul. You are loved, Anna. Not for what you have done, but for who you are. Not for how perfectly you have followed the rules, but because you are mine. Tears streamed down my face as the weight of those words sank in. I had spent my entire life trying to earn something that had been freely given all along. I had tried to perfect myself, believing that only in perfection could I be accepted. But now, standing in this light, I understood the futility of that pursuit. My worth had never been tied to my efforts. It had always been rooted in his love. The figure reached out again, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. The touch wasn't physical. It was something deeper, a connection that transcended anything I had ever known. In that moment, it was as though every scar on my soul, every wound I had carried, was being healed. The hurts I had inflicted on others, the regrets I had buried, the doubts that had plagued me, they were all being washed away. I am making you new, the voice said, and I felt it happening, not just in a figurative sense, but in a way that was profoundly real. The darkness that had clung to me was gone, replaced by a light that now seemed to radiate from within me. The figure stepped back, and the light began to shift, not fading, but transforming. It was as though I was being shown something, a glimpse of the life that awaited me. I saw myself returning to my community, not with judgment or condemnation, but with a message of hope. I saw conversations where hearts softened, where the weight of tradition gave way to the freedom of grace. I saw lives transformed, not by my efforts, but by the truth I had been shown. As the vision unfolded, the voice spoke one final time. Anna, your journey is not over. The life I have given you is not for you alone. Go and share what you have seen, what you have felt. There will be challenges, but you will not face them alone. My grace will be sufficient for you. The light around me began to shift again, and I knew that this moment, this encounter, was preparing me for something greater. My heart swelled with both anticipation and a peace that surpassed all understanding. I was no longer the same. I was no longer bound. This was just the beginning. As the light began to recede, I felt myself returning, not in the same way I had come, but as someone profoundly changed. The warmth of the encounter lingered, wrapping itself around me like a protective embrace. I didn't feel fear or uncertainty, though I knew the path ahead would be difficult. Instead, there was an unshakable conviction, a sense of purpose that burned brightly within me. The voice that had guided me now spoke softly, its tone carrying a reassurance that I would carry with me forever. Anna, the journey back will not be easy. There will be doubt, opposition, and moments of loneliness. But remember this, I am with you always. I closed my eyes, letting those words settle into the deepest parts of my soul. As I did, scenes began to unfold once again, this time, not of the past, but of the future. I saw myself standing before members of my community, sharing the truth I had encountered. Some faces were skeptical, their expressions hard and closed off. Others showed glimmers of hope, their eyes filled with the same longing that had once consumed me. I saw conversations that stretched late into the night, prayers whispered in secret, and lives slowly but unmistakably changed. The vision shifted, and I found myself looking into the faces of those I loved most. My family, bound by traditions they had never questioned, stood before me. My father's expression was firm, his gaze searching. My mother's eyes glistened with tears, torn between her faith in the Ordnung and the unmistakable change she saw in me. My siblings stood silently, their youthful curiosity clashing with the weight of obedience that had already begun to settle on their shoulders. In that moment, I understood the enormity of what lay ahead. The truth I had been shown wasn't just for me, it was a gift meant to be shared, even if it came at great personal cost. My task was not to dismantle the Ordnung, but to show that its true purpose was to point us toward a deeper relationship with the Creator. It wasn't about rejecting the rules, but understanding that they could never replace the grace and love I had now experienced firsthand. The light around me pulsed once more, and I felt the presence of the divine receding, not as a departure, but as an invitation to step into the next chapter of my life. The voice spoke one final time, its words echoing with authority and love. Go, Anna. Share what you have seen. Walk in the freedom I have given you, and let others see the light through you. As the light faded completely, I felt a sudden weight return to my body. The sharp sting of cold air hit my skin, and the muffled sounds of the world began to filter in. Voices calling out, the distant whinny of a horse, the wail of an ambulance siren. I opened my eyes to find myself lying on the frozen ground, surrounded by paramedics and worried onlookers. My body ached, but my spirit felt alive, renewed in a way I could never have imagined. This was my return, but it was only the beginning. If Anna's journey has touched your heart and inspired you, we invite you to join our community. Click the like button to support our shared mission of spreading hope and faith, and don't forget to subscribe to be part of this incredible journey. Together, we can explore stories that uplift and transform. The days that followed my return were filled with both challenges and profound moments of clarity. I awoke in the hospital to the worried faces of my family. My mother's hands trembled as she clasped mine, her eyes searching for answers I wasn't yet ready to give. My father stood quietly at the foot of the bed, his stern expression masking the concern that I knew he felt. Though my body ached with the impact of the accident, my spirit felt renewed, as though the light I had encountered still burned brightly within me. At first, I struggled to find the words to explain what had happened. How could I describe something so deeply transformative, so beyond the realm of our daily understanding? I prayed silently, asking for guidance, and as I did, a sense of peace washed over me, reminding me of the promise that had been given, I am with you always. It was over dinner one evening, as we sat around the large wooden table that had been in our family for generations, that I finally spoke. I told them about the darkness, the light, and the figure who had called me by name. My voice trembled at first, but as I recounted the encounter, I felt a boldness take hold of me. I spoke of grace, of love, and of a freedom that could never be earned, but was freely given. The room fell silent when I finished. My mother's tears were evident, though she said nothing. My father, ever the pillar of tradition, looked away, his jaw tight. Anna, he said finally, what you're saying is different. Dangerous, even. I nodded, understanding the fear behind his words. It's not about rejecting what we've been taught, I said gently. It's about seeing the heart behind it all. The rules were never meant to save us. They were meant to point us to him. Some of my family listened with hesitant curiosity. Others, like my father, remained skeptical. But I knew that the seed had been planted. My task was not to force them to believe, but to live out the truth I had encountered so clearly. As weeks turned into months, I began sharing my testimony more widely. In the quiet corners of our community, I found others who had also felt the weight of striving, the emptiness of living by rules alone. We prayed together, read scripture, and spoke openly about the grace that had transformed my life. Slowly, a ripple of change began to move through the hearts of those around me. Not everyone accepted the message. There were whispers of disapproval, accusations of rebellion. The elders called me before them, questioning my intentions and warning me of the danger I posed to the community's unity. But even in the face of rejection, I stood firm, my heart anchored by the light that had set me free. I wasn't alone, he was with me, just as he had promised. Now, as I walk this new path, I see the beauty in what lies ahead. I am no longer defined by fear or the weight of perfection. My life is guided by love, by grace, and by a relationship that surpasses all understanding. And as I continue to share this truth, I am reminded of the words that first called me to this mission. Go, Anna. Share what you have seen. If this journey has inspired you, don't let it stop here. Click the like button and join our community by subscribing, where we share stories of transformation and faith. And for a revelation that could change your life, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. It's waiting to bless and inspire you. Don't miss it.